The text message came in at 9:47 on a Tuesday night. I remember the exact time because I had just set my phone face down on the kitchen counter, telling myself I was done checking it for the evening. I had a glass of water. I had the quiet. I had 11 more pages of a contract review that needed to be finished before 8 a.m. the next morning. And then my phone buzzed, and something in the way it buzzed, just once, heavy, made me pick it up. Sign the release or I tell your firm you've been stealing from the family trust. You have until Friday. My brother sent that. I put the phone back down, face down again. I picked up my pen. I read the same sentence in the contract 4 times without understanding a single word of it. Here's what you need to know about me. I'm a contracts attorney. I have been for 6 years. I review agreements for a living. I catch forged signatures, fraudulent clauses, misrepresented terms. It's what I do 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, sometimes 6. I am not someone you try to con with paperwork. My brother tried to con me with paperwork. My brother tried to con me with paperwork. I need to back up. Growing up, my brother. I'll call him by what he was to me, which was simply my brother, 4 years older. The one who got the benefit of every doubt our parents had to offer, was the kind of person who moved through the world assuming someone else would clean up behind him, not maliciously at first. That's the part people never believe. It wasn't malicious. It was just habitual. He borrowed money and forgot. He made promises and got busy. He started projects our parents funded and lost interest and shrugged and moved on to the next thing, and our parents would look at me, the younger one, the one who had gotten a scholarship and paid her own way through law school and never once asked for a co-signer. And they would say, "You understand, don't you? He just needs more time." I understood for a long time. Longer than I should have. My father passed 3 years ago. He left behind a small family trust, not life-changing money, but meaningful, enough to matter. He'd set it up carefully, with specific terms. The principle was to remain intact. Distributions were limited to documented medical emergencies or educational expenses, and both my brother and I were named as beneficiaries with equal standing. I was also named as the administrative trustee, which meant I kept the records, managed the distributions, and made sure everything was done properly. My brother did not like that arrangement. He didn't say so directly, not at first. What he said was things like, "Dad trusted you more, I guess. It must be nice to be the golden child." And I would absorb it and say nothing because I had learned a long time ago that engaging with those comments only produced longer versions of them. The first time he asked me to approve a distribution that didn't meet the trust terms, I said no. It was 8 months after my father died. My brother wanted $40,000 to invest in a friend's restaurant. I explained, as gently as I could, that discretionary investments weren't covered under the trust terms, that I had a fiduciary duty, that it wasn't personal. He told me I was being rigid. He told me Dad would have wanted him to have opportunities. He told me I'd always been selfish. I said I was sorry he felt that way. I did not approve the distribution. Over the next 2 years, there were 4 more requests. A business consulting venture, a down payment on a vacation property, funding for some kind of app his friend was developing. Each time I said no. Each time I explained the terms. Each time he found a new way to tell me I was the problem. The last request came 14 months ago. He wanted $62,000 for what he described as a medical expense. I asked for documentation. I'm required to, it's not optional, it's in the trust instrument. He sent me a letter on what looked like hospital letterhead, itemizing a procedure and a recovery program. I'm a contracts attorney. I look at documents for a living. The letterhead had the wrong zip code for the hospital it claimed to be from. The physician's name at the bottom didn't appear in the state medical board registry. The formatting of the itemization was inconsistent in 3 places, in ways that suggested it had been assembled from multiple sources. I didn't say any of this to my brother. I made a phone call to the hospital directly. The billing department confirmed they had no record of any procedure or patient account, matching the information on the letter. I sat with that for 3 days. I want to be honest about those 3 days because they're important. I didn't feel righteous. I didn't feel like I had won something. I felt sick and tired and sad in the specific way you feel sad when someone you grew up with turns out to be someone you don't recognize. I called my best friend. We've known each other since college. She's one of the only people who knew the full picture of my family. And I sat on my bathroom floor and I cried for about 40 minutes. Then I got up, washed my face, and started making a list. I documented everything. I had been keeping records since the day I became trustee, because I'm a lawyer and that's what lawyers do, but I went back through everything with fresh eyes. Every request, every denial, every piece of correspondence. The fraudulent letter I photographed, preserved in multiple formats, and sent to my own email with a timestamp. I wrote a detailed memo to myself outlining what I had found and what it likely meant under both trust law and criminal statutes. Then I consulted a colleague, a probate attorney I trusted. Without naming my brother, just describing the situation as a hypothetical. She told me that presenting a fraudulent document to a trustee in order to obtain a distribution from a trust is a felony in our state. Fraud, potentially forgery. Depending on the specifics, it could also implicate federal wire fraud statutes if any electronic communication was used in the scheme. My brother had sent the letter as a PDF. By email. I filed the documentation with the State Attorney General's office. I did not tell my brother I had done this. I sent him a short, factual email stating that the distribution request was denied due to insufficient supporting documentation, and that I would require resubmission with verified records if he wished to reapply. He didn't respond for 6 weeks. Then the text came. Sign the release or I tell your firm you've been stealing from the family trust. You have until Friday. I put the phone down. I picked up my pen. I read the same sentence 4 times. Then I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. I want to explain what the release was, because it matters. Sometime in the previous weeks, I didn't know this until later, my brother had consulted his own attorney, who apparently told him that if he could get me to sign a document releasing him from any liability related to the trust and resigning my position as trustee, it would complicate any future legal action. So he had drafted something, or had someone draft it for him. And he wanted me to sign it. And his strategy for getting me to sign it was to threaten to tell my firm that I had been misappropriating trust assets. I want you to sit with the geometry of that for a moment. He had just submitted a fraudulent document to obtain trust assets. He was now threatening to accuse me, the person who had reported his fraud, of stealing from the same trust, using a text message, which is a written record, time-stamped, sent directly to my phone. My brother is not a stupid person. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. He's not stupid. He just thought I wouldn't fight back. He'd watched me absorb and accommodate and stay quiet for so long that he had genuinely miscalculated what I would do. I didn't respond to the text that night. I forwarded it to my personal email with a note. I forwarded it to the probate attorney I'd been consulting. I took 3 screenshots. I slept. Not well, but I slept. The next morning, I arrived at work 20 minutes early and requested a brief meeting with the partner who oversees our firm's professional responsibility matters. I told her I needed to give her a heads up about a personal situation that might generate an outside complaint. I showed her everything: the trust documents, my records, the fraudulent letter, the email chain, the text from the night before. She looked at everything for a long time. Then she looked at me and said, "You did everything right." I nodded. I went to my office. I had a 9 a.m. call. I did not sign the release. By Thursday, 2 days after the text, 1 day before his deadline, 2 things happened that I had anticipated but still felt strange to actually experience. The first was a voicemail from my mother. She and my brother had always been close in a way that left little room for complexity or contradiction, and her message was what I had expected: strained, careful, trying to sound neutral, while being anything but. She said she thought maybe there had been a misunderstanding. She said families shouldn't fight over money. She said she hoped I would think about what was really important. I listened to it twice. I didn't call back. The second thing was a letter, an actual paper letter, which told me his attorney had advised him to stop putting things in text, requesting that I schedule a meeting to discuss the trust administration and consider a mutual resolution. I forwarded it to my attorney. His deadline passed. I did not sign the release. 3 weeks later, I was contacted by an investigator from the Attorney General's office who had been assigned to the complaint I'd filed months earlier. She asked if I had any additional documentation. I sent her the text, the voicemail transcript, the letter, and the full file I had assembled. We spoke for about an hour. She was professional and precise, and at the end of the call, she thanked me and said they would be in touch. I hung up and sat in my car in the parking garage for a few minutes. Not crying, just quiet. It was around this time that I made a decision I'd been circling for a while. I had been offered a position with a firm in another city. It was a better firm, better work, a practice area I'd been trying to move toward for 2 years. I had been hesitating for reasons I was only partially honest with myself about: inertia, mostly, but also the sense that leaving felt like running. I had grown up being told that I was too sensitive, too serious, too rigid, that I took things too personally, that I needed to learn to let things go. And somewhere in there I had internalized this idea that any action I took to protect myself was really just an overreaction. That leaving was proof I couldn't handle things. I accepted the offer. I told no one in my family. Not immediately. I gave my notice, arranged my move, found an apartment. I packed on the weekends. I sorted through what I wanted to keep and what I was willing to leave behind, and I found that the sorting was easier than I expected. I have always been someone who knows the difference between a sunk cost and an asset. The week before my move, I sent my brother and my mother each a short factual email. It stated that I was relocating for a professional opportunity, that my contact information would change, and that all trust-related correspondence should go through my attorney going forward. I included my attorney's contact information. I included nothing else. No explanation. No explanation. No apology. No invitation to respond. I'm not going to tell you my brother didn't respond, because he did. Several times escalating in tone. I'm not going to tell you my mother didn't leave more voicemails, because she did. And some of them were hard to listen to. I'm not going to pretend the clean narrative where I walked away and felt nothing. What I will tell you is what actually happened on the Friday morning I drove out of my city for the last time. I had one box left in my car. I had turned in my keys. I had said goodbye to the colleagues I wanted to say goodbye to. I stopped at the coffee shop I'd been going to for 4 years, ordered my usual, and sat by the window for about 20 minutes. The barista, a woman who had been there almost as long as I had, asked if I was moving. I said yes. She said congratulations. I said thank you. I drove out of the city. I stopped once for gas and once for lunch. I arrived at my new apartment at 6:15 in the evening. I had arranged for the movers separately, so the place was mostly set up. I stood in the kitchen and drank a glass of water. I looked out the window at a street I didn't know yet. It was an ordinary evening. That's the part I want to be honest about. There was no dramatic catharsis. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired and relieved in a way that was quiet rather than loud, like when a sound you've been hearing for so long you forgot it was there finally stops. I should tell you what I found out later, because it's the part people always ask about. Approximately 6 weeks after my move, the Attorney General's office completed their review. My brother was formally charged with 1 count of fraud and 1 count of attempted fraud in connection with the trust. The fraudulent letter had been traced back to a specific source, a document template service accessed from his home IP address, which meant the digital trail was clear. Because the document had been transmitted electronically across state lines, there is a question of whether federal charges might also apply, though I don't know how that was ultimately resolved. His attorney negotiated. I don't know the specific terms. I know that a plea was entered and that the trust is still intact and that I am no longer the trustee. I requested removal as part of the process, and the court appointed an independent professional trustee to manage the remaining assets. I am still a beneficiary. I receive my distributions when they're due. I changed my personal phone number about 2 months after I moved. I didn't send the new number to my family. My mother has my work email, which I check. She has used it twice, once to inform me of a family event I was not able to attend, once to send a photograph with no message attached. I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I filed it in a folder. I have been in my new city for 8 months. I have good work. I have a neighborhood I'm starting to know. I have a friend who moved here 2 years ago and who has been showing me the best coffee shops in a 3-mile radius, with the dedication of someone completing an important project. Last month I signed a lease, a real one, not a month-to-month, on an apartment that gets morning light in the kitchen. I want to say something about the release my brother wanted me to sign, Because I think about it sometimes. Not with anger. Just with the kind of clinical interest. The way I think about any document that almost worked. He needed me to sign it because he was afraid. He had done something he couldn't undo, and he thought that a piece of paper, something with my signature on it, could make him safer. That if he could get me to sign away my right to pursue him, he could go back to the way things were. The way things had always been, where I absorbed and accommodated and stayed quiet and he moved on to the next thing. What he miscalculated, what people like him always miscalculate, is that the person they're trying to control has been studying the situation just as long as they have. Longer usually. Because the person doing the absorbing has to understand everything just to survive it, while the person doing the taking only has to understand enough to ask again. I understood everything. I did not sign the release. There's a framed print on the wall in my new office. I bought it from a street market a few blocks from here, the weekend after I moved in. It's a simple thing, just a geometric shape, nothing profound, but I hung it where I can see it from my desk. And sometimes in the middle of a long contract review, I'll look up at it for a moment. I think about my father sometimes. I think about what he intended when he set up that trust. What he imagined for us. I think he knew something was fragile, and that's why he put the terms in so carefully, why he made sure the paperwork was airtight. He was a cautious man. He trusted language more than he trusted people. So do I. And that, in the end, is what saved everything. The Thursday after I moved, my best friend drove up from her city and we had dinner at a place near my apartment. We sat for 3 hours. At some point she asked me if I was okay, not in the surface way, in the real way. The way she's been asking me for 15 years. I thought about it. I said yes, and I meant it in a way that felt different from all the times I'd said it before. All the times it was technically true, but mostly just functional. She ordered dessert. I ordered coffee. We talked about her job and her apartment and a trip she was planning, and at no point did we talk about my family, because we'd said what needed to be said and there was nothing left to add. I drove home at 11 p.m. I parallel parked on a street I was starting to recognize. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment in the cold air before going inside. I had a good night's sleep. I had work in the morning. That was enough. More than enough. It was the first time in years that enough actually meant enough. I've thought a lot about the word trust lately, not the legal kind, though that's what started all of this, but the ordinary kind, the kind you extend to someone because you share a last name, because you sat at the same dinner table for 18 years, because you assumed that blood meant something beyond biology. My brother assumed I would stay quiet. That's the part I keep coming back to. Not that he forged the documents. People make desperate choices, and I've made peace with the fact that I'll never fully understand what was happening in his head when he decided to do it. What I can't get past is the assumption underneath it. He had watched me for years, watched me manage, accommodate, absorb, adjust, and he had concluded that I would keep doing it forever. That my silence was permanent, that I had no limit. He was wrong about the limit. There's something I've come to understand about the way cause and effect actually works in families like mine. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. What happens is quieter than that. Every time a person absorbs a consequence that isn't theirs, they teach the other person that consequences are optional. Every time I covered for him, explained away a broken promise, approved something I shouldn't have approved. I was, without meaning to, helping him believe that the rules didn't apply to him. Not because I was weak, because I was trying to keep the peace. But peace kept at that price isn't peace. It's just a longer fuse. The thing my brother never understood about me, about people like me, is that the patience is real. The accommodation is genuine, but underneath it, the whole time, is someone who knows exactly what's happening. I wasn't blind to what he was doing. I was choosing over and over to believe it might stop. That's not the same thing as not seeing it. When I finally stopped choosing that, everything else followed logically. The documentation, the report, the move. None of it was impulsive. None of it was revenge. It was just the natural consequence of his choices finally being allowed to land where they belonged. On him, not on me. I think about what it actually takes to rebuild a life after you've spent years making yourself smaller to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. It's not one big moment. It's 100 small ones. It's signing a lease. It's ordering your usual coffee. It's sleeping through the night without the low-level hum of someone else's crisis running in the background. It's realizing slowly that the version of yourself that existed before the accommodation started is still in there, just quieter, waiting. Integrity is not dramatic. That's what I've learned. It doesn't look like a confrontation. It doesn't require an audience. It's just the practice of making sure that what you do matches what you know to be true, even when no one is watching, even when it costs something, even when it costs something, even when the person it costs you is someone you once loved, in an uncomplicated way. My father built that trust carefully, because he understood that love without structure is just a good intention. The trust held because the paperwork held. I held because I knew what the paperwork said. That's enough. Some days that has to be enough.